Hello everybody, and thank you for watching my gardening video. So if you follow me on my cleaning, tidying, decluttering channel, you'll know that I'm working to complete my challenge, 30-day challenge of 10,000 steps a day and saying no at least once to something. And you'll be pleased to know that I finished doing the voiceover to my cleaning video and I was on 6,000 steps. So I needed to find another 4,000. And as my husband is in Birmingham, that has involved me walking in circles around the front garden. Then it started to get dark, so I came in and ran on the spot. Well, I say run, it was more like a jog, then stop, because I'm really not as fit as I need to be. So this is my 1930s garden. There's always lots to do here, and I absolutely love spending time in the garden. So here I'm just finishing off. I started in my previous video some work with my pots and tidying around. There's lots and lots of stones at the front there, and they were from, goodness knows how many ton of soil that we sieved. Because I didn't want to pay for a skip, I decided to sieve all of the soil, to use the stones in an area here around the pots, and I put the soil in a massive grey container which previously had sand in it, and I'm slowly using the soil up. My family members laughed at me actually, because a skip would have obviously been quite expensive, but in the last couple of years any plants that I sell I use that soil. So rather than pay for a skip, I look like I've sold the soil. Even if I don't get much for the plants, it's the fact that I'm getting rid of all the soil. So there's quite a few things in this garden I wanted to tidy up, and you'll be aware of the awful weather that we've been having. Well, I say awful, obviously we need the rain, and it's nice that the grass is so green, but it's been extremely rainy and not much sun at all. So I wanted to tidy up the little area here in the corner. You can see there's more of the laurel that I need to cut back. I've cut back so far, and you can see it's still sticking out. I need to cut that back and just generally tidy up. The logs there that my husband cuts need to be put in the wood shelter. And you can see my massive blue bag where I'm filling full of all the garden waste. Now this area has got a little bit out of control. So I do like the sort of the cottage garden look. I like some of the traditional plants, but the rain has been so strong that a number of my plants, particularly my giant delphiniums, the purple ones there, have sadly all collapsed. So I had this plan that I would cut some of them back and put them into a vase indoors, but actually I think that unfortunately they're past it. So by bringing them indoors, I'm going to create myself another problem, because once they've kind of on their way out, they've nearly finished, they drop all their pollen, which would then just create me another job there. So on the right hand side, that's a rose bush just going up the trellis. I've also got a honeysuckle. I've got quite a few giant delphiniums, and there I was just thinning out my daisies that flower at the end of the summer, and I was also thinning out some of the goldenrod. The goldenrod seems to be extremely happy with the rain, because some of that has got as tall as me, so I wanted to cut some of that back and just thin some of it out, because it all had really just grown so much, and I haven't done anything in this area. And some of the grass now, I think I might mow a bit more, because it is looking a little bit untidy. I do like the sort of wild more garden, but obviously there's a limit to that. I want to have lots of flowers for the bees and lots of insects, which encourage the bats, because we do have bats at the end of the summer. And my next door neighbour have bees, and they give us the honey. And I think a lot of the bees spend time in my garden because there's so many flowering plants. You can't quite see, but on the left of me there, they are Jerusalem artichokes. So we do dig up some in this area because we eat some of them. But this year, I'm probably just going to let them start spreading, because last year they were quite small, so I think I'm going to leave them for a year. So I did look to see whether I could get the delphiniums to stand up, to hold up. But they've just been beaten so heavily with the rain. They didn't really seem like there was that much chance for me to do much with them. I thought maybe I could have attached them with string onto the trellis, but then they're quite a distance from the trellis, so I'm not sure that would have really worked. But they're really lovely. I moved them from another location. I left some of the kind of the roots. They grow from quite like a sort of, it's like a bulb. It's not a bulb. I can't think of the word at the moment. But I moved it, and where I moved it from, I left a piece, but that never grew again there. But here it seems to be really happy. You can see I've got quite a few where it's spread. And here I just got into the middle there just to thin some of the goldenrod and the daisies out, because I just got so big. I've also got like this pink like ragwort which grows. You can buy it in garden centres, but it really grows like a weed. My motto around weeds are anything that somewhere you don't want. So like some weeds I actually choose to keep, like dandelions. I've got a pot of dandelions where many people would just pull them up and class them as a weed. But I think a weed is anything which is where you don't want it to be. If it's a weed and it's where you want it to be, then happy days. I've got a fatsia and a pear tree at the back, and also a tree which has got like nice red leaves. So I got that reduced in the garden centre. I'm not sure what it is because it didn't have a label. But there are quite a few things at the back there that I want to be able to get plenty of light to and not be, I don't know, surrounded so much all around their roots and not be able to get the goodness from the soil. And also on the left hand of the video, underneath one of my delphiniums, is my anniversary rose, and that's almost been taken over by all the plants that have gone crazy as well. Right at the front I've got a big geranium, so it's quite big, not that many flowers on it, but that's looking really strong. And I have got a couple of lupins in there as well, but they've kind of been overshadowed by the goldenrod and by the daisies as well. Now the daisies do actually sell quite well, and what I did one time was all the ones I pulled up I repotted and then sold them 2 for £5, and I sold quite a few, but I haven't got so much. I've got limited time at the moment, and there's so many. I just wanted to get rid of some and just clear a space. I'm trying to also go for a different sort of look in terms of different greens, which is why I like that lighter green, the fatsia there, and the sort of like little pear tree. And even if I don't get fruit enough for me or my husband or daughter to eat, any sort of small pears or small apples on my apple tree will be good for the insects and bees and wasps. So when I get this bit a bit more clearer and I sort of thin that all out, I bring the brown bin over and fill the brown bin up, because our garden refuse is collected every other week, so I like to make sure the bin's full. I then go over to the trellis where it's sort of like quite shaded and just cut some of the privet over, because that's sort of getting quite big and hanging over, which obviously creates a bit of darkness there. And then after I bring the brown bin over, you'll see how I fill that up. I've got a few stinging nettles. I managed to get all stung on my arm, which was unpleasant. And then you'll see me in the greenhouse. Now, usually at this sort of time, the greenhouse is like chock-a-block and you can't really get in there. Well, I can get in there, but nobody else can get in there, because if I go in and knock over a plant, then that's me. But if anybody else does, then obviously they'd be sorry and I'd be sorry. So you'll see all the different plants that I've got in my greenhouse, and I've got lots and lots and lots. Every year I now do dwarf beans. The last couple of years I've done kale, and the last couple of years I've done kohlrabi. I should also say, just here where I am in the video, I've got a honeysuckle that's in the ground, and then I'm trying to trail it up on the trellis. So I'll have the honeysuckle there, then I'll have the rose bush, and then I've got my passiflora, which is growing over the arch. So I want to just fill the trellis in a bit more. It was the plan. The trellis has now been in for, I think, 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. And I was thinking that we would paint it. but I'm not really sure that we will now, because the amount of work to cut all the plants back and then to paint each of the individual bits, that would take ages with a very small brush, wouldn't it? So I think probably what will happen is I'll just have it there, and then when it starts breaking down and rotting, I guess we'll replace it. I like the variegated privet, so I was trying not to cut too much of that, but I did cut some because it was just hanging over so much. I just want to get as much light to those plants at the back as possible. Also, I've got ivy coming up, and there were some other stingy nettles back there, so I wanted to get rid of those. Don't know where the stingy nettles come from. I've also got some the next door neighbour, the other side. I've got like thorns coming through, and that's the problem. Thorns, they send out runners, any sort of bushes like that, black similar to like blackberry bushes, only they don't have any blackberries. And they send out runners, and the runners go underneath the fence panels and up into my garden. And they're really difficult to keep on top of. I haven't set up my mini greenhouses this year, so normally I have a couple of mini greenhouses on the go. But I think it's partly because it's rained so much, we haven't just spent so much time in the garden. And the greenhouse is like quite cold to go out into the greenhouse and stand there and put plants in. Just haven't just felt like it. And I think probably by the time it's nice weather consistently, I'll be on holiday. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I'll get as many of the beans in as possible in my mini vegetable plot. And that will mean that when I come back, I might have some beans that I'll be able to eat. I always say to my family, if anyone's like doing the watering, I always say, please help yourself to anything that's ready, because I don't like waste. I hate the thought of coming back from holiday and seeing loads of raspberries that have gone to waste or beans that are rotten. I just think, well, this sort of makes me a bit sad really after I've grown them all. So I always say, please take whatever you like while I'm away. So it's quite good to get the brown bin filled up, because as I said, it's only collected every other week. So I try to do a real push to make sure that's full. Even if I make sure I cut the grass and time that in, so you can see those lovely delphiniums, how tall they are. They're as tall as me. It's such a shame they completely collapsed. I usually have a stand where they grow up in between the stands, but this year I was too late putting the stand in. So by the time they're growing, I couldn't then put the stand over the top of the flowers. So that was a bit of a shame. But you can see how much I've got growing there, and I think that's why the hedgehogs like my garden so much, because there's so many bugs and slugs and snails they can find. I went on a walk yesterday with my family, and as we passed by all these houses and bungalows, all of them have got brick weave front gardens, gravel front gardens, or plastic grass front gardens. And you think there's no surprise, is there, that wildlife can't thrive? I mean, I do understand there is a place for that, and sometimes you need it if someone's elderly and they can't do much, but a lot of them didn't even have like one pot of flowers outside their front door. There was nothing at all. So when I've finished this area, you'll see I then go on into my greenhouse. So in my greenhouse, on the little shelf at the back there, I've got a whole line of peas, and then at the front there, I've got my runner beans. And here I'm just weeding because there's bits of grass, because I've used the soil that I told you that I sieved. So it's not fertile soil, it's not good quality soil, but it doesn't matter. The beans grow fine, and also you can't confuse them with other seeds. I did make the mistake of using that soil for seedlings that I didn't recognise. That was not a good idea. But for runner beans, it's fine for me because I know exactly what a runner bean looks like, so I can pull all the weeds out and just leave the runner beans to grow. So you could see in that clip how long it takes to sort some of this out. You know, so sometimes you look and then think, oh, it doesn't take very long, and the video's all fast forwarded. But in each of those pots, I was taking the weeds out, taking the grass out, and I was really pleased with my tray of dwarf beans. So rather than doing the individual pots, I just did a tray. I thought this is quick and this is easy. And then when all the tray came up in a week, all of the dwarf beans, and you're not too late if you want to put some in, depending upon where in the world you are, of course. But if you're in England, you're not too late. Grab yourself some dwarf beans or runner beans or peas, and you can still put them in. So then what I did to repot the dwarf beans was use a bit of my sieved soil, put that in the bottom, then put the dwarf bean on top, and I'm going to grow them on till they're about 10 centimetres tall. And then once they're about 10 centimetres tall, I'll then put them into my little vegetable plot. My vegetable plot is really small. My husband did suggest about putting the dwarf beans in pots though. And I thought that's a really good idea because they don't take up much space. They're really not very big at all. And he was just standing there and saying to me, how about using some of these pots? Sometimes we use the pots for tomatoes. We're not doing tomatoes this year. We've had some years of great success with tomatoes. Usually my husband does the tomatoes, but last year we didn't really have much success from them. So we're not doing tomatoes this year. So I think we'll use some of the trays, the big sort of thick trays and pots, and put some of the dwarf beans. So I repot the whole of the tray and then I plant another tray. So I've still got some seeds left. And the good thing is with beans and dwarf beans is, of course, one plant can give you, I don't know, 30 beans, 20 to 30 beans, the dwarf beans, and the runner beans, well, you could get, maybe 60 off a plant if you position them the right, and they can easily get pollinated. But you'll see me in a bit also do the kohlrabi, and that did really make me laugh because the kohlrabi have come up like cress. It was quite old seed, so I didn't think they were all going to come up, but they've all come up, and they're honestly like cress. So I was very, very carefully separating them. My husband came out and brought all my seeds for me, which is very good of him. But each kohlrabi that I'm taking out and putting in one pot, that is like the size of one roast potato. You know, it's just one vegetable. So I was thinking about how many, because I've done, I don't know, I think I've done about 30, and I've only done a tiny part of the tray. I asked my father-in-law whether he wanted some. He didn't seem very keen. I asked my dad if he wanted some. He didn't seem very keen. So maybe we'll just end up eating kohlrabi all winter and no potatoes. I just like them because it's an unusual vegetable. It's very difficult to buy here. If you find it, it's expensive to buy. So I think that makes sense to grow something that's more expensive. And I always try to find different vegetables that I can give my daughter. And she really likes them roasted. So we really like roast dinners. Come sort of October through to February, we have quite a lot of roast dinners. I'm also making a point of labelling everything with my labels and my pen that my sister kindly got me for my birthday. I've learnt the hard way. Although I do know the difference between runner beans and dwarf beans, I just still want to carefully mark them out. In the past, I've thought to myself, oh no, I know that they're those beans and they're these beans and they're artichoke and that's echinops. And then I start looking at them and getting a bit confused. I've used like bits of stick to say, oh, they're pink lupins, and the other bits, the twigs, are red lupins, and then they all get in a muddle. So I asked for loads and loads of labels with a black and white pen my sister got me. So at the moment I'm using the black labels and the white pen. So that was really good getting all that done. And then next up, you'll see me in the front garden. So I was getting a bit fed up with how untidy it looks. So my husband did a great job at cutting the hedge, but you'll see there's a few hedge pieces left, but also there's the ivy all at the bottom of the hedge. And I just think that looks so untidy. So I wanted to sort all that out. And then tomorrow, hoping that I have time, I'm going to move the car and I'm going to sort out the stones. because we've got liner under the stones, and there's a patch which is really high traffic, and that's got all ruffled up. I don't know how many times this has happened. I don't know, maybe 5 to 6 times, and every time I rake all the stones back and I put all the underlay again and carefully return it, and within a few months it's all rucked up again and it all looks messy. I just don't like the way it makes your house look when these things are untidy. You know, a few weeds and small things can make a big difference. It can make a house go from looking really nice and really tidy to really looking quite untidy. So I managed to do about 4 of the green pots full. So I was quite pleased about that, and the brown bin's now full. And then you'll see me do that from different angles, so you can see the improvement that I'm making really, and clearing so much. There's quite a lot of brown leaves underneath the hedge and so much ivy to come up. So I get all that done all the way to my beds there. And the beds in the corner that you'll see in a minute, that's my daughter's garden. So I managed to get quite a lot of done. So thank you for watching my gardening video. And for those of you that are from my other channel, you're very welcome here. This is all just to talk all about gardening. I really love gardening. I don't always know all the Latin names of plants, but I've taught myself about plants and how they grow and their conditions and moving plants and cutting things back. So I've never had any sort of training. I've just learnt as I've gone along, and I've always been like an outdoor person. So as a child, like say for instance on a Sunday when we were all at home, my preference would be to be outside in the garden with my dad, or helping him with his vegetable plot, or just being outside, whereas my sister would generally be indoors, listening to the charts, listening to music, and be indoors with my mum. But I've always much preferred to be outside. Anyway, thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what projects you've got in your garden and what things you're planning. It's always nice to hear about other people's projects. And also, if anybody knows any YouTube channels of cottage gardens or 1930s gardens, I'd be very interested. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.